More than $5 billion in education grants released. What you need to know. Breaking news. Education Department releases over $5 billion in previously frozen educational grants. The Trump administration's controversial hold on vital education funding has finally ended, and school districts across America can breathe a sigh of relief. But here's where the story gets interesting. A massive $2.2 billion earmarked for teacher professional development represents the largest portion of the newly released funds. Image credit, L.A. Johnson, NPR. In a major policy reversal, the U.S. Education Department has announced it will distribute more than $5 billion in education grant funding to states that have been previously withheld. The funding saga began in late June, when the Trump administration unexpectedly informed states it was delaying distribution of these already approved federal grants, citing a need for additional review. This announcement came just one day before July 1st, the traditional disbursement date that schools across America have long relied upon for budgetary planning. The sudden freeze created significant financial uncertainty for countless school districts as they prepared for the upcoming academic year. Earlier this month, we saw the first signs of movement when officials agreed to release funding specifically for before and after school programs. Now, according to Maddie Biederman, who serves as Deputy Assistant Secretary for Communications at the Education Department, the situation has fully resolved. The Office of Management and Budget, OMB, has directed the department to release all formula funds. The agency will begin dispersing funds to states next week. The pressure to release these critical educational resources came from multiple directions. Lawmakers from across the political spectrum actively advocated for funds to be distributed, highlighting the severe financial burden the freeze placed on both state education systems and local communities. Republican Senator Shelley Moore Capito joined Democratic colleagues in pushing for the release, demonstrating rare bipartisan agreement on the issue. Additionally, several states took legal action against the administration, filing lawsuits specifically designed to force the release of its essential funding. And this is the part most people don't realize. These grants support an incredibly diverse range of vital educational initiatives. The funding packages include support for migrant education programs, specialized services for English language learners, and comprehensive adult education initiatives, all of which serve vulnerable populations who particularly benefit from targeted educational support. The most substantial portion of the previously frozen grants, approximately $2.2 billion, is dedicated to professional development for educators. Tara Thomas, who manages government affairs at the School Superintendents Association, AASA, explained to NPR that districts frequently utilize these specific funds to finance ongoing teacher training and professional growth opportunities. At the end of the day, it's really just funding that makes teachers better at their jobs, Thomas noted, highlighting the direct connection between these resources and classroom quality. What makes this situation particularly noteworthy is that it isn't the first time these specific educational programs have faced scrutiny from the current administration. In fact, the administration's proposed budget for fiscal year 2026 had actually recommended completely eliminating all of the grant programs that were temporarily frozen, suggesting a consistent policy position rather than a one-time review. This raises important questions about the future of educational funding in America. Is this temporary release of funds merely a strategic pause in a larger effort to restructure federal education spending? Or does the bipartisan pressure to maintain these programs indicate they're too valuable to eliminate, regardless of political ideology? Do you believe federal funding for teacher professional development is essential for maintaining educational quality? Or should states and local districts bear more responsibility for these costs? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The education funding debate is far from over. Unlocking $6 billion. Education Fund Release Explained. Imagine the relief of educators and students nationwide as the Trump administration finally releases a staggering $6 billion in education funding that it had previously withheld. This decision, announced by a Department of Education spokesperson on Friday, marks a significant turn of events. The funds, which had been frozen earlier this month, encompass a wide array of crucial programs. These include title program funding for English language acquisition, teacher development, adult education, and more, as confirmed by the spokesperson. ABC News obtained a copy of one of the letters from the U.S. Department of Education to various states, informing them that the funds would start flowing the week of Monday, July 28, 2025. Nebraska, Mississippi, Rhode Island, and Utah are among the states that have already received these notifications. The letter explicitly states that states must adhere to federal laws, Office of Management and Budget, OMB regulations, and presidential executive orders when utilizing these funds. But here's where it gets controversial. On Thursday, Secretary of Education Linda McMahon hinted in an ABC News interview that the $6 billion, which had been paused and under OMB review, could be released by year-end. McMahon emphasized, "We want to ensure we're correctly focused on our educational goals for students." The funding, authorized by Congress, had been under scrutiny to check if it was being grossly misused to promote a radical left-wing agenda. This review sparked widespread debate and concern. Various advocacy groups have lauded the administration's decision to release the funds, though they criticize the delay. Some groups are already worrying about the FY 2026 funding landscape. Sky Perriman, president and CEO of Democracy Forward, which represents plaintiffs in the federal lawsuit Anchorage School District et al. Versus Department of Education et al., called the release a major victory for public education and the communities it serves. Perriman vowed to monitor the situation and ensure legal compliance, ensuring the fund reach those most in need. National Parents Union President Carrie Rodriguez celebrated this hard-earned win and thanked advocates for their efforts. However, Rodriguez also called out members of Congress for allowing the situation to escalate into chaos. Montserrat Garibay, advocacy chair for the National Association for Bilingual Education, and NAB, welcomed the release, but stressed the need for continued vigilance. NABE relies on title-free funding for English learners, but Garibay highlighted that next year's funding is still uncertain. The proposed FY26 budget eliminates Title III funding, which is crucial for our students' future and educator development, Garibay noted. Last week, several Republican senators urged the Trump administration to reverse its decision to withhold the funds, while a coalition of school districts and advocacy groups sued over the freeze. Friday's announcement followed the recent unfreezing of over $1 billion in after-school and summer learning funds. States will need to follow new guidelines moving forward. Many programs reported receiving these funds earlier this week. It remains unclear when states will receive the newly released education funding. But with the school year imminent for many districts, the time is critical. Do you think this decision will have a lasting impact on education? Should there be stricter oversight on how these funds are used? Share your thoughts in the comments.